Welcome to our committer orientation series on the Eclipse Foundation development process. In this video series, we discuss the fundamental principles, processes, and practices, and introduce you to the series of training modules we've assembled to help you be successful with your Eclipse open source project. But first, welcome to the Eclipse Foundation. As a new committer, you have become a vital part of our community, tasked with upholding our core values of vendor neutrality, transparency, and meritocracy. Your role is essential in guiding our open source projects, reviewing contributions, and ensuring our collaborative development environment remains open and accessible to all. We look forward to your contributions and the leadership you will bring to our projects. The Eclipse Foundation development process, also referred to as the EDP, is the foundational document for Eclipse projects and committers. It describes the manner in which we do open source software. The EDP does not prescribe any particular development methodology. It is more concerned with the larger scale aspects of open source project lifecycle, including things like reviews, processes for running votes and elections, bringing new committers onto a project, etc. The open source rules of engagement are the foundational principles that underpin how we believe that open source should be done. Eclipse projects must be transparent. To operate in a transparent manner, you and your project team need to ensure that your community has the ability to understand what the project team is doing. This means that all development plans, issues tracking and resolution, discussion, and more must be developed on open channels where people who are not a part of the project team can follow along. Eclipse projects must be open. Transparency is concerned with letting people know what you're doing. Openness is concerned with letting them participate as an equal player. As an Eclipse project committer, you have to be open to new ideas and work with contributors to ensure that their contributions have an equal chance of becoming part of the project. Project teams should have well-defined rules for participating that apply to everybody, regardless of who they work for or factors other than the quality of their contributions. Eclipse projects must be meritocratic. Project participants earn their way to additional responsibility. You must be prepared to invite a regular contributor who has gained your trust and that of your team through a pattern of contribution to become a committer themselves. A committer who shows leadership may one day become a project lead. Vendor neutrality is a core principle that is derived through our open source rules of engagement. Operating in a vendor-neutral manner is a primary objective of the Eclipse Foundation governance model. By extension, operating in a vendor-neutral manner is a goal for all Eclipse open source projects. You and your project team are expected to do your day-to-day work in the Git repositories provided by the Eclipse Foundation. This includes issue trackers. The project team is required to track the addition of new features and mitigation of bugs using issue trackers provided by the Eclipse Foundation. You and your project team are expected to review merge and pull requests from the community, confirm that contributors are correctly covered by a valid contributor agreement, and merge contributions with technical merit that align with the project's goals and scope. Further, you are expected to invite regular contributors who have gained the trust of the project team to join as committers. Operating in a vendor-neutral manner requires effort. It may require a change in the way that you and your colleagues work. As such, it helps to regard moving your project to the Eclipse Foundation as a process, not an event. If your Eclipse open source project is new, you should use the time that the project will spend in the incubation phase to learn how we do things. So, what is an Eclipse open source project? An open source project is the main operational unit for open source software development at the Eclipse Foundation. An Eclipse project has a team of committers and resources that it uses to implement its scope and goals. Pragmatically, an Eclipse project, or more specifically, an Eclipse project team, implements the Eclipse Foundation development process, the Eclipse intellectual property policy, along with various other policies and practices. An Eclipse project conforms to the Eclipse Foundation's trademarks and branding guidelines. An Eclipse project operates in an open, transparent, and meritocratic manner. Finally, an Eclipse project uses infrastructure provided and managed by the Eclipse Foundation for all core content. Core content includes source code, issues, and primary communication channels. As a committer, you are a primary facilitator for the project. Committers are the ones who decide what code goes into the repository, what gets included in builds, and what ends up in the open source project's products. Code written by a committer can and should be pushed directly into the project's source code repository. Committers also have a responsibility to work with contributors to help them get merge and pull requests accepted. Committers are the ones who identify contributors who have gained their trust and are candidates to become committers themselves. We require that all committers review the Eclipse Committer Due Diligence Guidelines. As a committer, you must vet contributions for correctness and alignment with the project's scope and goals, review contributions to ensure that they do not contain obvious vulnerabilities, and engage in intellectual property due diligence review. If you are concerned that content may have been copied, is substantially similar to someone else's content, or that a contributor is not otherwise operating in good faith, contact the IP team for help and advice. As a committer, you bear responsibility to ensure that contributions, whether generated by a human or an AI, are correct. If your Eclipse open source project is new, then it is likely in the incubation phase. Becoming an Eclipse open source project is a process, not an event. It may take your new open source project weeks or months to adopt the principles, processes, and practices that the community have come to expect Eclipse open source project teams to follow and implement. All new Eclipse open source projects start in the incubation phase. The concept of incubation is unrelated to code quality or stability. After establishing itself as a functioning Eclipse open source project, your project will graduate into the mature phase. Your Eclipse open source project will spend most of its lifetime in the mature phase. There are several videos in this committer training series. In these videos, we discuss certain key elements of life as a committer on an Eclipse project. Our Starting an Eclipse Open Source Project module walks through some Eclipse open source project fundamentals and the process that we follow to propose and create a new project. If you're new to Eclipse open source project work or are planning to propose a new Eclipse open source project, this module provides the information that you need to get started. The Eclipse Project Roles module discusses the roles defined in the Eclipse Foundation development process. Committers are the ones who decide what code goes into the repository, what gets included in builds, and what ends up in the open source project's products. Project leads are the first link in the project leadership chain and the primary liaison between the project team and the Eclipse management organization. The Project Management Committee, PMC, provides oversight and overall leadership for the collection of projects that implement their mission. Your project is part of that. The PMC takes a role in determining how its projects fit together and how they communicate and interoperate. The Eclipse Foundation provides two options for managing your open source project's content: Managed GitHub and the Eclipse Foundation's GitLab instance. The Eclipse Projects and Git module describes how these resources are structured on these platforms, how we manage privileges, and the support that the Eclipse Foundation provides to ensure that necessary intellectual property due diligence is applied. The open process provides a means by which community members can build their reputation and gain the trust of the development team. Transparent elections are the means by which you can grow your project team. We discuss this in the Committer Elections module. As a committer, you and your project team ultimately decide what will become project content and how your Eclipse open source project will leverage third-party content. As such, you take a critical role in the intellectual property due diligence process. As a committer, you must understand the intellectual property that is contained within your project along with the third-party content that it references. As the first line of defense in our intellectual property due diligence process, your adopters count on you to identify potential problems and bring intellectual property issues to the attention of the Eclipse IP team. Our Eclipse Foundation Intellectual Property Due Diligence module introduces the Eclipse Foundation's intellectual property policy and corresponding IP due diligence process, and introduces you to our dedicated team of professional IP specialists who perform the heavy lifting in the due diligence process. The Eclipse-License Tool module introduces you to a tool we provide that is intended to help you assess the license status of the content that your project leverages. The tool is intended to assist. It is not the authority. The tool really only knows what you tell it. While it does have some rudimentary functionality for rooting out content, we very much depend on you and your project team to understand the content that your project contains and leverages, and to ensure that all content is identified and fully vetted. In our use of artificial intelligence by Eclipse committers and contributors module, we discuss the generative AI usage guidelines for Eclipse committers and provide some practical advice on their application. This is not a how-to guide. Our goal with this module is not to teach you how to use AI. We are specifically not discussing important issues like the ethical use of AI. We recommend that you work with your employer, colleagues, and teammates to identify specific training on the responsible use of artificial intelligence. Our focus is entirely on governance and our obligations to adopters, developers, users, and the community at large. Let's wrap things up. For more information, look for the rest of this video series. The Eclipse Foundation Project Handbook contains a great deal of practical information for committers. If you need assistance with infrastructure, matters of governance, security, and more, interact with the team via Help Desk, or contact the EMO directly by email if you need help. Your journey as an Eclipse committer begins now. Embrace the principles of transparency, openness, and meritocracy as you step into this vital role. Every contribution, review, and community interaction is an opportunity to build something lasting and meaningful. We look forward to supporting you as you grow your influence, earn the trust of your peers, and help shape the future of our open source ecosystem. Welcome aboard.